2021, members volunteered to improve the lives of women and girls through programs leading to social and economic empowerment. Approximately 76,000 Soroptimists in over 100 countries and territories support community-based and global projects. The organization is particularly concerned with providing women and girls access to education, and this is the most effective path to self-determination. The Fond du Lac Club was founded in 1952, and along with chocolate fantasy sales, our ornament sales are our second biggest fundraiser. Every year it sponsors an entrepreneurship seminar for 13-year-old girls and a women's history event. In fact, this coming March, Soroptimists will sponsor the library's History at Home program, while Alexa Quinney, a Stockbridge Indian and the first public school teacher in Wisconsin. The Ornament program kicked off in 1990 when Soroptimist members were casting about a very viable fundraiser. Little did we know that is still going strong after 26 years later. Early ornaments were white, but gradually different colors were introduced, even along with two-sided ornaments. But believe it or not, we nearly pulled the plug on the ornament program after 2005. We felt we'd run out of landmarks. But inspiration struck. In 2006, we offered what turned out to be our best seller. It was the beer hut. So it only makes sense that our number 2 seller was Gillies, which was featured in 2009. It seemed that people wanted to relive the days of cruise in the gut. The Ornament program has attracted a loyal following. Every year we ship all over the country and even overseas. In the program's 26 years, we estimate that we have raised easily over $100,000. We have ornaments on hand today after the program, and we have special sales coming up. But all year long, ornaments are always on sale at the City County building. So let's get started. Take it away, Renee and Terry.
I'm Renee. Okay, so it all began with the lighthouse in 1990. That was pretty obvious to us that that's where we needed to begin this program. The lighthouse was donated to the city by lumberman W.J. Nuss. It was announced in 1932 and construction began the next year in 33, with work being done by what the newspaper called unemployed men. It was in fact an FDR Works program, Works Progress Administration, WPA, project that was aided by donations from local businesses. The lighthouse itself is a Cape Cod design by Roger Sutherland, made of clapboard and flagstone. The octagonal structure stands, you probably know this, 40 feet high and about 12 feet wide. The winding interior staircase accesses the catwalk at the top. It is positioned at the end of the breakwater entrance to what was then called the Big Hole. Some of us still call it the Big Hole, but that name was deemed inappropriate, and it was renamed Lighthouse Harbor in 1933. And here's a personal note. My children are the great-grandchildren of Frank B. Russell, who was the park superintendent in the late 20s and 30s during the Depression, and he worked with the WPA and probably supervised a couple of those crews. So in my house, the lighthouse has always been known as Grandpa Frank's Lighthouse. Soon the Soroptimists began selling a second 2-colored version of the lighthouse because the first one was so popular, it sold out, and we decided to keep it as a one-of-a-kind, not reproduce it. And so now there's kind of a secondary market in some places for that lighthouse. Anyway, the second lighthouse did satisfy the demand for the original.
In '91, we featured the Galloway House. The now grand Galloway property began very modestly. Early settler Celine Newton built a simple cabin on the site in 1846. After Edwin H. Galloway bought the property from Newton in 1868, he took 12 years to finish the mansion we see today. Grandson Edwin P. Galloway donated the home, carriage house, and land to the Fond du Lac County Historical Society in 1954. The Galloway House was restored in the 60s and retains many of the original furnishings from the late 1800s. The house has 30 rooms, which include a library conservatory, former parlor with stenciled ceiling, sitting room, playroom, 4 family bedrooms, 4 servant bedrooms, 4 fireplaces, and, quote, one of the first bathrooms in the state.
We're back to the park in 1992 with the Victorian Bandstand. The Fond du Lac Military Band played Sunday concerts in the bandstand for many years, every Sunday from Memorial Day to Labor Day. It was donated to the city in 1900. The bandstand is made of clapboard in the Victorian style and designed by Hiram Thompson. In 1959, a photo of the military band in the bandstand was featured on a 2-page spread in the Saturday Evening Post's Face of America series under the title Music in the Park. The accompanying article was full of nostalgia for a bygone era, a quote, before newfangled devices such as movies, radio, and television lured the audiences indoors. And when the warm breath of summer brought, as sure as lilacs, the Sunday band concert. At Lakeside Park, only the bandstand and the streetcar building remain in their original forms and locations since the founding of the park. The bandstand was designated an official historic landmark by the city in 1972.
Speaking of Lakeside Park, our 1993 ornament features the steam engine at the Main Street entrance. The Sioux Train Company selected this particular engine because of its extraordinary record. It was the last steam engine run by the Sioux Line. From its creation in 1911 to its retirement in 1955, it logged over 2 billion miles, running what was considered to be the longest passenger run in the U.S., from Fond du Lac to Winnipeg and back, a 1,600-mile round trip. It was installed at Lakeside Park on July 4th, 1955, marking the 100th anniversary of railroading in Fond du Lac. The installation program got underway with VIPs marching on the specially constructed stage to the tune of I've Been Working on a Railroad, played by the Fond du Lac Military Band, pictured here, under the direction of Joseph Schmitz. The ceremony was presided by Circuit Judge Russell P. Hansen and attended by, quote, an estimated 300 persons who disregarded the heat. Mayor Edwin F. Weiss accepted a framed picture of the engine and promised it would hang permanently in City Hall. It does not seem to have been hanging permanently. One 25-year City Hall veteran told us last week that she's been there 25 years, never seen a picture of the train engine. So we don't think it's still there. Among the speakers in 1955 was retired Sioux engineer W.F. Meager, who spoke on behalf of the old-timers. He said, the last time I saw this engine was on June 26, 1943, and believe me, she looked a lot different from what she does today. I had her on train number 2 from Owen to Fond du Lac. During a terrific rainstorm, we ran into a washout and plunged into a river. Through some miracle, the firemen and I got out on dry land, but the 14 was over on her side, partly submerged in water. That was the last time I saw her until today, and she looks fit and raring to go.
In 1994, it's St. Paul's Cathedral. The first St. Paul's Episcopal Church was erected at the corner of Follett and Bannister Streets. Bannister is now called Macy, and that was in 1851. The original building eventually became the Episcopal Boys Choir School, and then eventually the Children's Home. Families in the earliest days of the parish include names that you'll recognize on street signs: Ruggles, McWilliams, Doty, and Talmadge. In 1866, the expanding congregation moved to the stone structure on West Division Street. In 1875, the parish church became the Cathedral of St. Paul the Apostle and the seat of the first bishop, John Henry Hobart Brown of New York. Here's an odd coincidence. On St. Paul's Day, January 25th, 1884, which once was a major religious holiday, that first stone building burned. It was replaced with the present structure at 51 West Division Street between the years 1885 and 1887. Bishop Brown's successor, Bishop Charles Chapman Grafton, is credited with finishing the church's beautiful interior. He requested to be buried inside the church's walls. In August 1912, the area known as the Chapel of St. Michael the Archangel was redone. The white marble and red porphyry is a type of stone, sarcophagus supporting the life-size figure of the bishop in full vestments, became the permanent site of his burial on August 30th, 1913.
The old Masonic Temple, now turned into the Art Center, was built in 1907 as a meeting hall. In 1967, the Masons, Knights of Columbus, B'nai B'rith, and Greek Orthodox organizations initiated the first local brotherhood banquet. The affair, to which ladies were invited, was hosted alternatively by the Masons and the Knights of Columbus and continued into the late 80s. The Arts Council, Fond du Lac Arts Council, bought the building from the Masons on August 1st, 1995. The Arts Council pledged to retain the historical architecture and ambiance of the building, and thus were the unanimous choice as the new owners. A $2.2 million renovation was completed in 2000. It brought the building up to code, restored historical features, and included a 4,500 square foot addition with elevator, lobby area, and outside balcony. The Windover name came from a poem by Gerard Manley Hopkins, which was said to be a favorite of Windover benefactor Harry Quadracci. The poetic Windover is a falcon that hovers in the air against the wind and symbolizes the soaring of man's imagination and the spiritual quest that informs art. But the building was rechristened Thelma in June 2013 to honor the matriarch of the Sadoff family. The Sadoff Family Foundation was the primary sponsor of the 2013 renovation.
In the centennial year of St. Agnes Hospital, we featured the hospital, built in 1896 by the Sisters of St. Agnes when they expanded their teaching mission to include healthcare. When it opened in June of 1896, it sat at the center of a 10-acre park and it cost $30,000 without the furnishings. The building was heated with hot water and outfitted with speaking tubes between the departments and electric bells connecting each room. The water flowed directly from artesian wells located on the grounds. The first floor contained parlors, reception rooms, and offices, as well as the hospital for men. The second story contained the hospital for women and the chapel. The third floor had the operating room, which was lit with a 10-foot window. I don't think you wanted to have surgery on a cloudy day. The basement contained the laundry, kitchen, and newfangled hydrotherapy treatment room, then a major medical advancement. Get ready for this. This is the drawing of the rocking or oscillating bathtub, 1900. Hydrotherapy, or water cure, was developed in Germany and used to treat almost every known malady, from the common cold to chronic illness. It involved immersing parts of the body in a full tub of cold water for an extended period of time, on the belief that the cold water drew the blood from the diseased body parts and brought about a cure. The various types of treatment included the plunge, the douche, shower, hose, and cataract baths, the rubbing wet sheet, and the sitz bath, in which the patient sat waist deep in ice water for 15 to 20 minutes with a blanket thrown over the shoulders, probably for modesty. I don't think it kept him very warm. Repeated hydrotherapy was thought to reduce the mortality rate among patients who had typhoid fever.
In 1997, we featured the Fond du Lac County Courthouse. built at Main and Western Streets in 1882 for a whopping $62,000. In 1926, a $98,000 addition constructed on the west side added office space. Over time, though, the bell tower in the center and the towers on each side were removed. Before the building was torn down, the county held an auction on Halloween 1981. And according to Mike Menser, who wrote a story in the Reporter that appeared on November 1st, the next day, the auction picked the building clean, selling off office equipment, some seemingly as old as the building itself, paneling, furniture, railings, ledger books, classic old woodwork, door frames, courtroom pews, windows, books, and more books, radiators, copper wire, pipes, cabinets, toilets, bookcases, wainscoting, fluorescent light bulbs by the barrel, coolers, fire doors, floor tiles, sinks, air conditioners, and everything else. The front section was torn down to create what we call Veterans Park today. The back section became an extension of Macy Street.
Oh, the Fond du Lac Public Library in 1998. The original Fond du Lac Public Library started in 1877 and replaced the paid subscription service started by the Young Men's Club in the early 1870s. The club got badly into debt and was rescued by a ladies' society that paid the debts and gifted the collection to the city in 1877. After wrangling back and forth with the library board about getting out of their rented rooms on Main Street, and after Mayor F.B. Hoskins failed to get in to see Andrew Carnegie during a trip to New York City, the Women's Club took it upon themselves to appeal to Carnegie by letter and by petition. After a tense few weeks, Carnegie's response was read aloud between acts at the Crescent Opera House. And the cheer went up that went up was deafening, said, it's a quote, I don't know from whom. The Opera House, which became the Crescent Garage, was located on the southeast corner of 2nd and Mar. It burned down in 1908. You'll hear more about that fire in a little bit. This is a drawing of the Young Men's Association Library circa 1874. Carnegie gave the city $30,000 for a free library. Fond du Lac was one of 60 communities in the state to receive library grants from Carnegie, who donated about $50 million for 1,700 libraries across the United States. $50 million was big money even in those days, right? As of 2015, 14 of the original Carnegie libraries have been raised. 28 have been repurposed as communities have outgrown the buildings, according to the Wisconsin Public Radio source. Presumably the others are still standing and used as libraries. The building was designed by Milwaukee firm Van Ryn and DeGelicke at a total cost, including furnishings and the site, of close to $46,000. The library was designed to hold 30,000 books. Here's a quick trivia question. Can you guess how many items this library holds today? Anybody?
350,000?
Oh, you're a little high, Marion. 200,000. The cornerstone was laid in June 1903 at Sheboygan and Portland Streets. The new library was dedicated October 5th, 1904. The Women's Club commissioned a sculpture of Andrew Carnegie from Charles Mulligan of Chicago. Mulligan had created sculptures of President McKinley for Chicago's McKinley Park and Lincoln the Rail Splitter in Garfield Park. Sadly, Mulligan didn't get it done in time for the library dedication ceremony, as it arrived 4 months later in February 1905. And that bronze plaque hangs outside the wall, right outside this room. Look at it when you leave. Among the speakers at the dedication were Mayor John Hughes, and he said, "Its beams of steel and columns of iron will last for centuries." At the dedication ceremony, Harriet G. Steenberg, widow of former library board member and early Fond du Lac educator O.C. Steenberg, gave the library the gift of a grandfather clock. Said Mayor Hoskins, "It shall have a home and an honored place as long as these walls stand." And that clock still stands next to the fireplace upstairs on the first floor, but but it hasn't kept time for at least a decade. And here's a former librarian, Miss Mary Martin. We don't know the date of this picture. The library board was so pleased with the new building that they gave the head librarian, Miss Emma Rose, a $5 a month raise, bringing her salary to $600 a year. Miss Rose was followed by Miss Callie Wider, who was replaced by Miss Leela Janes, who may or may not be haunting the present-day structure. Janes worked at the Fond du Lac Public Library for nearly 38 years and was succeeded by the first male director, Eugene McLean, after whom this room is named. Probably many of you remember this library. I certainly do. The museum on the second floor housed the prized Civil War collection of C.B. Auberry. The collection is now housed in the Blakely Museum at Galloway House and Village, where just last year it was rediscovered by the Wisconsin Veterans Museum. The Veterans Museum knew that it still existed, but they had lost track of its whereabouts. The Children's Department started in 1891, the Reference Department in 1915, the Records Department in 1948, and Microfilm in 1954. Carnegie Library stood on this site until 1966. The cornerstone was removed during demolition in September of '66, a few months after all the materials were moved into a temporary site. The new library was dedicated on June 9th, 1968, and today's new library opened in 2004. And here's a second grade class from Bragg School making their bi-monthly visit to the Fond du Lac Public Library in 1948. The Carnegie Library stood until 1966. The cornerstone was written, we already said that.
Oops, technical difficulties. Okay, 1999, Chicago and Northwestern Railroad Station. One of the surprises that we encountered when we did this, worked on this presentation is that this image is in fact not the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad Station. It is the Sioux train depot. It stood across the street from the Chicago Northwestern, and we thank Tracy Reinhardt, who a frequent History at Home speaker. When she fact-checked this PowerPoint, she said that she almost fell off her chair when she saw that. She says most people don't realize Fond du Lac once had 5 train stations, 1 for each train line. So it was an easy mistake to make. Chicago Northwestern Depot, the one that still stands, was built in 1865 at the southeast corner of Forest Avenue and Brook Street.
Yep, lost our image, Terry.
Lost a picture.
That's not good. Okay, there we go. Phew. This photo shows the old Chicago and Northwestern Terminal on Wells Street in downtown Chicago. The building, our building, was designed by famous architect Charles Sumner Frost, who designed this structure as well as the Navy Pier Auditorium and more than 120 buildings for the Chicago and Northwestern. Fun fact, Frost's work for the train company got a big boost after he married Mary Huguet, who happened to be the daughter of the president. The Fond du Lac station served trains such as the Flambeau 400 and Peninsula 400 until it was closed in '75 after most inner-city passenger service in the U.S. was turned over to Amtrak, which happened in '71. Amtrak never used the station. This photo shows General Eisenhower, who stopped in Fond du Lac during a whistle-stop tour during his 1952 presidential campaign. Chicago Northwestern was granted permission to tear down the depot in 1975. A local group that called itself the Community Learning Center banded together to save the depot. It was added to the National Register of Historic Places on August 10, 1990.
(2000) Goodrich High School. The ornament image was taken from a photo taken by Mary Fran Merwin, who was a principal there, and recreated as a line drawing by Lorna Stefani. Originally called Fond du Lac High School, the building was constructed out of limestone veneer in 1922, with an auditorium added in 1925. It was renamed Lowell P. Goodrich High School in the summer of 1955. Goodrich was superintendent from 1920 to 1940. Goodrich High remained the city's high school until 2001. Langdon Divers was a member of the Fond du Lac High School's first graduating class. Langdon is the namesake for the art room upstairs. 79 years later, on June 7th, 2001, at the age of 99, he was quite a guy. He delivered the commencement address at Pruth Field on to the final graduating class of Goodrich High School. Among his comments, he said, "On the threshold of life, we bid you farewell. Your future looks bright. Make the most of it while you can. Learn from yesterday, live for today, dream for tomorrow."
2001, we featured the Etna Fire Station, number 5. Built in 1874 at 195 North Main Street, when Fond du Lac was the second biggest city in Wisconsin at a population of 12,800. It was designed in the Italianate style by architect Colonel Thomas H. Green of Fond du Lac. Green's other works included the former school on Merrill Street and the Fond du Lac Courthouse. He was the city's postmaster from 1842 to 1845. He studied carpentry under Isaac Brown. He joined the 1st Regiment of the Wisconsin Volunteers and was captain of Company I and K, 1st Wisconsin Infantry. The watchtower of the train station held a bell that called firefighters to the station and also signaled the 10 p.m. curfew for Fond du Lac's youth. The bell tower also served as a hangar to dry cloth hoses. Named for Etna Fire Insurance Company, it was used as a fire station until November 1979. A section of the original brass pole that firefighters used was relocated at that time to the lobby of the fire department headquarters on South Main Street. The building was sold in 2003 to attorney Doug Andrzejczyk. He converted the space to offices on the lower level and living space above. It's listed in the National Register of Historic Places. Early fire stations are rare. They're often replaced with modern buildings or seen as obsolete and poor candidates for adaptive reuse, and often are demolished.
Okay, a little water break now. The steeples of Holy Family Catholic churches graced the Ornament in 2002. The design came from a pen and ink drawing by Betsy Bowman of Fond du Lac, and it shows the 5 steeples of Holy Family Parish and a mini story of the city's growth and immigration. This is St. Joseph's Church on 2nd and Mars Street, site of the original Catholic Church in Fond du Lac. St. Joseph's Church began as a chapel built in 1847 by Father Bonduel, a noted missionary, and it was named at the time St. Louis Church. Acting on behalf of the Milwaukee Diocese, Father Bonduel bought 4 lots at Mar and 2nd Streets from Dr. Mason C. Darling, and he paid $130 for those 4 lots. The original church building was destroyed in a massive 1908 fire that damaged several nearby churches. It's known locally as the night the churches burned. And Tracy Reinhardt from the Historical Society will have more on that fire in her May 2017 History at Home program right here. The church was rebuilt in 1909 and 1910. In 1997, St. Joseph celebrated its 150th anniversary, and a year later, the decision was made to merge 6 Catholic parishes to form one parish, Holy Family. The church is now owned and operated by Thrive Church, which bought it this past summer. This is the beautiful interior of St. Patrick's Church, which is now, as those of you who attend local concerts, now used as a concert venue. St. Patrick's at 37 East Follett Street was the first church to break away from the original St. Louis Church. In March of 1854, about 15 Irish immigrants formed the St. Patrick's Temperance Society. They must have thought there was just too much going on. The society grew and eventually organized St. Patrick's in 1855. They even helped dig the foundation for the church, and parish history records show that Patrick Dorgan, John Ritchie, Kieran Cody, and Michael Corcoran and others were among those guys that pitched in and helped. The congregation began building the church in 1855, but the main block was not completed until 1862. According to local records, and this is a quote, "Construction of the church was slow and tedious. In 1856, the entire east wall of the church collapsed due to high winds and had to be redone. Construction was slow because of costs. Some reports also blame manpower and material shortages caused by the Civil War. In 1911, the impressive front tower was finished, and between 1934 and 41, the school addition was built, and the church was designated a local landmark in 1990. It's the double steeples of St. Louis Church, which is no longer standing. St. Louis at Follett and Macy was built in 1847 by French parishioners, some of my ancestors, as a matter of fact, when the original St. Louis got too crowded. They wanted to take the name St. Louis with them to show to the new church, since Louis is the patron saint of France. This request was granted, and the old St. Louis congregation was renamed St. Joseph. Dave Hazy eventually bought St. Louis Church in 2007 and was in the process of refurbishing it to move his business, Attitude Sports, there. However, it burned down in a spectacular and devastating nighttime fire on March 19th, 2007. A lot of us stood and cried and watched it. St. Mary's Church, still standing at 59 East Merrill, founded in 1865 by German Catholics who split from the original church when they felt it was getting too crowded. And then finally, St. Peter's Church in the village of St. Peter was first established by 42 families in 1866. That structure, which is still standing, was built in 1915. The school and the residence for the Sisters of St. Agnes, who were commissioned to teach there, were built in 1868. Salary for the sisters was recorded in an 1884 school meeting. And here's the quote: "Each family paid Sister Cecilia 2 bushels of cleaned wheat, besides the regular salary of $140.
In 2003, we featured the Elks Lodge. BPOE Lodge number 57 was built in 1904 at a reported cost of $40,000. It was so named because it was the 57th Elks chapter to be installed in the U.S. Before it closed just this year, it was the oldest operated Elks Lodge in Wisconsin. They claimed the 4 bowling alleys in the basement were the oldest American Bowling Congress certified in the U.S., dating back to 1909. But, however, the Holler House in Milwaukee also lays claim to that title. That's fighting words. Largely Queen Anne style, this 2.5-story building is anchored by a round corner tower with a conical roof. A wraparound porch extends around the south side, south elevation, and continues along the majority of the west facade.
Boyle Hall, we used to call it the Castle at St. Mary's Springs. It was built in 1900 by Fond du Lac philanthropist John T. Boyle for use as a sanitarium or nursing home. He chose the site for the famous natural springs that bubbled through the area and were said to offer natural healing elements. Unfortunately, the location proved impractical. It was way out there, and transportation of the ill by horse and buggy from Fond du Lac proved far too difficult, and the building fell into disuse. In 1909, with a $10,000 donation from John Boyle for remodeling expenses, Boyle Hall became a boarding academy for girls and was run by the Sisters of St. Agnes, which had purchased 450 acres on the ledge in 1899. Boyle became a dormitory when the sisters built a classroom building next door in 1929. It became classroom space again in 1956. Actually, in the 60s, the art department was located up on the 3rd floor, and I guess it was a good choice. It had beautiful natural light. However, that ended in 1970 when the school opened a new building. A portion of the building was residence for the chief of maintenance and his family until 1983, and it remained vacant until it was demolished in 2005. Was it haunted? In 2005, the reporter carried a story that the Boyle site was popping up on paranormal websites with the claim that, this is bizarre, that a nun delivered a stillborn baby in the elevator and then killed herself with a crucifix. At night, the ghostly sounds of a baby crying can be heard throughout the building, said one site. Sister Michaela O'Brien, who taught at St. Mary's Springs for many years and is still living and alive and well and kicking, she debunked the claim. She said the story originated from one of the teachers being scared by noises from what turned out to be a homeless man who had been sleeping in the boiler room. Or was it?
2005 Taylor Park Shelter. In 1893, the heirs of former Fond du Lac Mayor Jared M. Taylor sold 12.5 acres of Taylor's Grove to the city. It was developed into a park. Pools, one for kids, one for adults, were added in 1904, and the pavilion was constructed at about the same time. Some think the pavilion was donated by John T. Boyle, who also donated the Lakeside Park Pavilion. Restoration work has been ongoing and has included the installation of a new cupola in 2003. It's said that the area around Taylor Park includes the remnants of Indian mounds left by the ancient Aboriginal peoples known as the Mound Builders.
Here was the best seller of all time so far in our series, The Beer Hut. And this was a new twist. It was the first ornament that had a picture front and back. The Beer Hut opened in 1933 and ran until 1972. It was operated by Sam and Fern Costas after Prohibition was repealed. Sam emigrated to the U.S. from Greece when he was 15 years old. It boasted the first car hop restaurant in Wisconsin and the only one in the U.S. to serve beer. And there were up to 50 varieties of beer served at one point. The Beer Hut and the Drive-In Theater will be the focus of the January 19th program here at the library, the History at Home program, at 2 o'clock and repeated at 6 o'clock. Everybody remembers this image. Right? The Costas family made their own root beer, and mugs of the little baby-sized mugs were free, I think, to kiddies under maybe age 5. Anybody have one? No. The carousel, first built in 1920 and by nationally famous Allen Herschel Company, was added in 1955. That first year, an estimated 20,000 free ride tickets were given out. The drive-in movie theater was added in 1950. You probably can't read this, but this was the menu around 1958. And it was called A Delightful Adventure in Drive-In Eating. If you were a big spender or really hungry, you could have a steak nick sandwich, and that was a ½ pound of specially seasoned steak, garnished with rich ripe tomato, crisp lettuce, grilled onions, mustard, salad dressing served on individual French bread for 90 cents. If you weren't quite as hungry or didn't have 90 cents, and if you had 60 cents, you could get a pizza steak with mozzarella cheese, stuffed Italian sausage, topped with American cheese, pizza sauce, and Romano cheese, served on a water roll. I think a hard roll is what that meant. For 30 cents, you could have a bacon and lettuce sandwich, and for 40 cents, a banana skyscraper sundae. Try a bottle of imported beer. There were 6 from Germany, included Heineken's, and others from Japan, Switzerland, Philippines, Ireland, England, Denmark, and Mexico. French fries were served 7 different ways. Can anybody name the 7?
Gravy.
Gravy was one, for sure.
I'll give you ketchup, that's 2.
Tartar sauce.
No,
No, that's not there.
Cheese?
No cheese.
no.
Think weird.
Gravy?
Onions.
Vinegar?
Yes.
Vinegar.
Vinegar's 3.
Special seasonings,
4.
mayo.
5.
What are we missing, Terry?
Honey,
Honey. That's
and the
right.
kicker,
Yeah.
ice cream. It's on the menu. Ice cream with your french fries. Lit. 2007 Retlock Theater. It opened to the public on Christmas Day, 1925, as a venue for vaudeville and movies. All 1,100 seats were located on a single floor. Eventually, movies became the sole form of entertainment, and by 1941, it was operated by the national company Alliance Theater Corp. In the 80s, 2 additional screens were built at the rear of the building. It closed in 1998. It was sold in 2000. In 2001, it reopened for a time as the Bravo Center for the Arts, Performing Arts. a venue for dinner theater, dance recitals, and live theater. Despite efforts to save the building, and after being vacant for 7 years, the original 1925 auditorium, the stage, and 2 theaters in the back were leveled in 2014. The facade was preserved.
Okay, we're up to 2008 and the Hamilton Building. In 1917, the heirs of Woodman C. Hamilton, who operated sawmills in Fond du Lac, donated the land and the family home on Forest Avenue to the city on the condition that the city would buy up the rest of the block and convert it to a public park. The Hamilton Building was completed in 1920 as a memorial to those who fought in World War I. It was originally designed as a place where farmers could eat their lunches when they came to the city to trade. In 1947, the park board altered the space for use as a youth center, right. It included a shooting range in the basement. Later on, it was the Boys and Girls Club Teen Center. The building was torn down after it was badly damaged, along with a lot of other things, in the 2008 flood.
2009, Gillies Frozen Custard. Tom Gillis opened Gillies Frozen Custard Drive-In on South Main Street in 1949. Tom was a brother of Paul Gillis, who owned Gillies Drive-In on Blue Mound Road in Milwaukee. Paul's shop opened in 1938. Tom met Doris Curley when she worked at Paul's Drive-In before the war. The couple married in 1950 and moved to Fond du Lac to run the business and raise a family. They originally lived in the small back room of the restaurant. It had only enough space for a double bed and a dresser. Many years later, daughter Joanne told the reporter, those first years they made no money and tried to sell the place, but nobody would buy it. Tom Gillis' son Jim, who began working at the stand at age 10, bought the business in 1992. And I'll recite a poem from Gillies' website. Please turn lights on for service, is the title. When you want to call your waitress and you're sitting all forlorn, you will get her to you quicker with your lights than with your horn. For there ain't a gal among us who has eyesight that has growed to the point where she can look around and see whose horn has blowed.
The YMCA was next, another two-sided ornament. One side shows the original Y, a 4-story brick building at 16 East 1st Street. It was built in 1907 and opened in March of 1908. That site is now a parking lot. The building included bowling alleys, meeting rooms, a residence for men, and a gymnasium that was described as the largest in the state outside the Great Armory in Madison. A swimming pool was added in 1913, but the Y eventually outgrew this location and began construction at the new facility in 1963. The other side shows the Y in 1964 when it opened at 90 West 2nd Street. Major additions and renovations took place in the late 70s and the 90s. The west side, plus other structures such as Everett's Bakery, was demolished in 2009, and construction of the new $12 million facility was completed at the end of 2010.
In 2011, the Postilion. Dr. Mason C. Darling, who we've brought up several times already today, Fond du Lac's first mayor, bought the land at the end of Park Avenue in 1841. He sold that land to his son in 1847, who in turn turned it over to Ann Bowman in 1850. The property, dubbed Darling House, was built in 1885. Leanne Cooney, no maiden name could be found anywhere. Cuny, I think. Leanne Cuny was born in Antwerp, Belgium, raised in France, studied interior decorating and culinary arts in Switzerland, and moved to the U.S. in 1937. She met husband John H. Cuny Jr. in Milwaukee, and the couple moved to Fond du Lac in 1947, where she fell in love with the countryside. It reminded her of France of her youth. As much as she loved the geography, though, she found the local food, quote, appalling, or so said her son when interviewed many, many years later by the Chicago Tribune for her obituary.
Maybe it was French fries and ice cream.
That's appalling. In 1947, Madame CUNY opened an antique shop on Merrill Avenue. In 1949, the couple bought Darling House and renamed it Postilion. Fun fact, Postilion is the name of the person who rides the front horse on a team and guides the team. The kitchen Madame CUNY created was distinctive. Its blue and white tiled floor and white cabinets evoked the French country kitchens of her youth. She ran a variety of businesses in the building, including the Postilion Restaurant, the Postilion School of Culinary Arts, and the Postilion line of gourmet prepared foods. In 1986, she had 23 products on the market, including plum pudding, mincemeat, mango chutney, and cognac sauce, many derived from her mother's recipes. She also operated Four Winds Restaurant in Greenbush. She closed to Fond du Lac Postilion in 1980 to open Postilion 2 in Milwaukee, which ran from 80 to 84. In researching this, I couldn't resist offering a few Madame CUNY quotes that jumped out at me. And I can't do the French accent, so you'll have to imagine. One philosophy of my cooking is no waste. I teach how to use the utmost value of all ingredients. Not a fiber of food is wasted. I don't think one is completely dressed without a hat. Yes, I'm a taskmaster, but not a tyrant or an ogre. I'm an autocrat. Democracy is not my way. There is too much aggressive familiarity in it. People will presume to use your first name. Madame CUNY died April 7, 2005 of a heart attack while on business in Chicago, reportedly at age 90. She was the first American and first woman to be inducted into the European Chefs Association. She's remembered today through Madame CUNY's demonstration kitchen on the second floor of the Milwaukee Public Market in the Third Ward. One of her best dishes, according to her daughter Suzanne Smack, was spiced butternut squash caramelized with brown sugar and cinnamon. I looked and looked and looked for that recipe. I couldn't find it. I did find Madame CUNY's wild rice a la Postilion, which this one was printed in the New York Times in 1978. It calls for ingredients that included 1 large truffle and suggests to serve it with rabbit and red wine and prune sauce. We'll get right on that.
Dorcas Chapel on the campus of Marian College was built in '66 when Marian moved from its original site near St. Agnes Hospital on Division Street out to National Avenue. It's named for the woman Dorcas of the Bible. She was said to be a disciple and a seamstress who made and donated clothing for the poor, especially for widows. Tradition says that she's one of the persons St. Peter brought back from the dead. The chapel's round design symbolizes a spool of thread with a needle stuck in the top. You can really see that, can't you? The round design inspired the round designs of the library, the Stayer Center, and Common Grounds, which came later on the campus.
2013 Union Soldiers Monument. The monument was erected in 1902 and has attracted controversy from almost the very start. Fond du Lac Civil War era artist Mark Harrison bequeathed $500 in seed money to the Fond du Lac County to erect a monument in Courthouse Square. The end product, made by Bronze Monumental Company of Bridgeport, Connecticut, cost $5,500. The difference was paid by taxpayers, who passed the referendum 54% to 46%. Rumors and accusations flew. Were members of the statute committee lining their pockets? It turned out that no, they weren't. Accusations of shoddy construction work were more on the mark, though. The monument started to tilt shortly after crews put the pieces together. The county expected to get donations from several organizations, including the Grand Army of the Republic, or GAR. It complained that the monument wasn't made out of materials promised. They gave it the nickname Tin Soldier. In fact, the GAR was not alone. The Women's Relief Corps and other veteran organizations were so enraged that a stone monument wasn't ordered, they started another fundraising effort. A proper stone veterans monument was erected at the entrance to Rienzi Cemetery. And for a time, Memorial Day parades went from downtown to the Rienzi Monument. The monument depicts 4 major Civil War battles: Shiloh, Vicksburg, Gettysburg, and Atlanta. Fond du Lac County boasted that it had more Union Army volunteers at the start of the Civil War than any other Wisconsin county. The monument was restored and the tilt fixed in 1987. During restoration, the soldier was brought down and moved inside the city-county building so people could get an up-close look. When he was returned to the monument, he was rotated to face into the park and not, as he had been, directly into the trees that had grown to obscure him. Not everybody was happy with this decision, however.
The old Lakeside Park Outdoor Theater. Let's all go to the lobby, let's all go to the lobby. I bet everybody can sing the whole thing. It was built by Sam Costas of Beer Hut fame in 1950 and it closed in 1983. Famous for its huge screen, its extensive concessions menu, and playland with its miniature train and $1 per carload buck nights. We have it on good authority, though, that many teenagers' cars would be carrying an extra load in the trunk on buck nights. Here's a trivia question. What's the industry term for those little short films that air before the feature? Like the movie trailers, the coming attractions, newsreels, and advertisements? Anybody know?
Shorts.
Those are called snipes. Somebody said it, right? No? Okay. In 2000, Let's All Go to the Lobby was selected for preservation by the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress. Let me start over on that. In 2000, Let's All Go to the Lobby was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. Here's another trivia question. What was the first movie shown at the Lake Park Outdoor Movie Theater, June 21st, 1950? Wild guess? It was The Nevadan. And anybody know who the stars were?
Anybody guess?
Almost
Here are the stars, come on.
Randall Scott.
Yes, Randall Scott. And,
Barbara Hill.
no,
No?
I think the age difference is about 30 years, by the way, of these two, the love interest, but.
Dorothy Malone.
I failed to introduce our presenters tonight, and I am going to introduce them at the end, but tonight we do have Ellen Evricks with us. She is a Soroptimist member, and she will be, I bring attention to her because of the 2015 Ornament, Evricks Bakery. The building was built in 1902. It housed the bakery for 70 years. Evricks Bakery was founded in 1934 by Richard Evricks Sr. It passed from family ownership in 1998 when Ellen Evricks sold the business to Prescott's Supermarkets. Grocery mega retailer and supplier Roundy's acquired the bakery when it purchased Prescott in 2002. Ellen told the reporter at the time, "My husband's grandfather, Emil Evricks, actually had started Evricks Bakery in Chilton. But in 1934, the family moved to Fond du Lac to open another bakery. She added that the family lived in an apartment above the bakery during the early years, yet that apartment was eventually turned into office space. Evricks was famous regionally as a scratch bakery, known for ethnic, regional, and seasonal favorites, including kolache, summer rolls, peanut squares, peach coffee cake, and their signature brown-eyed Susan."
And this year, we are featuring Petrie's Restaurant. Petrie's was opened in May of 1937 by Anita and Clarence Petrie. The reporter story quoted Anita as saying, "We served nickel hamburgers, 6 for a quarter. No dinner was more than 25 cents. The original 23-stool diner, Petrie's Lunch, was on the northeast corner of Merrill and Main, where Hopper's silk-screening All-Star Trophy now stands. Petrie's Restaurant moved across the street in 1946. It was enlarged in 1952, and the cocktail lounge area was added in 55 when the restaurant was expanded again. In 1959, Clarence and Anita met Colonel Harlan Sanders at a Milwaukee restaurant owners convention. The Colonel took a shine to the couple and awarded them the first Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise in Wisconsin. It started with a small takeout section in the back of Petrie's and it grew from there. In '72, the family acquired and raised several adjacent buildings to add a large parking lot. They also added new construction to the old building to achieve the Bavarian facade. Clarence died in 1982. On October 1st, 2000, Anita, who was then 86, and her son Edward closed the restaurant.
Before we get into 2017, I wanted to thank a few people. Our presenter, president-elect of the Soroptimists is Renee Dufour-Russell. The woman who introduced the program today was Donna Christensen, who will be manning the ornaments table. But also Mary Lebb and Sally Powers Alberts from the library and Tracy Reinhardt from the Historical Society were instrumental in helping us gather the information for this presentation and then fact-checking it. And I introduced myself already. Yeah. But that brings us to 2017. We would love to hear your recommendations and suggestions about what we could feature next year. Any ideas out there?
Sturgeon spearing.
Sturgeon spearing. Okay, I'm writing it down.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
In the Petrie's ornament, I noticed you had the water tower.
Yeah,
That's torn down.
that's
now.
torn down, right?
Yeah, I just
That was
wondering
kinda-
what brought that about. I think it's nice. I just wondered just because it was there.
Why did we use that image?
When we thought we had run out of landmarks, and now when we think we might be getting close to the end, it's because the city, this is kind of a personal peeve of mine, doesn't seem to preserve its old buildings. We tear things down and start over. And so that's kind of hampers our efforts to memorialize them this way. So if you've got any old
Hill Brothers.
well, and the kinds,
Hill Brothers.
Kresge's, Fun Lake Store, Kresge's, any,
Mike,
what?
McKnight's,
Woolworth,
Newberries.
Newberry.
Weeman.
Newberries, NEW,
Yes.
and there was another one, Neiman,
Weeman.
Newberry.
we, W.
W-E,
W-I.
If I remember right.
cool.
Fanny Farmer Building.
Fanny Farmer Building.
That's one Williams is in.
The roofing building.
Oh.
Ripples.
Briggles, yeah. Landmark.
It's still there.
Huber Brothers.
How about the bar across the street from that lot where the Harry,
Oh, yeah, yeah, Carrie Nation, Carrie Nation Bar.
Yeah.
These are all great.
Terry.
Yes.
Like McKnight's or MacArthur Drug.
That's another drugstore, right? Yeah. So we have Five Dimes and we have drugstores. They're kind of similar, but not exactly the same. McKnight's.
Yeah, he just.
MacArthur Drug was
I will tell you that for some of these in naming, it's very, very hard to find both pictures and information on them. They were part of our lives when we were growing up, but if there were pictures, I saw my first picture of McKnight's recently when Tracy posted it. We have been hunting for 2 years for a picture of McKnight's. So
Isn't that amazing?
some of these, it's hard to find a picture.
Yeah. When I moved here 15 years ago, and I've been hearing about caramel crisp since I got here. Everybody treats it like it's like the lost horizon.
How about the old post office?
Stand by Tucker's.
Post office, I heard,
Yeah,
and
The old one, yeah.
the old one
old
with,
post office,
yeah, with the
which is where
animals on
now,
it,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Mhm. And then I heard
The little popcorn stand that's all by Tucker's.
popcorn stand.
It used to be right
Gideon's
down on
Illinois.
Main Street,
Isn't that amazing?
right by Summit.
The old city hall.
O'Brien's Dry Goods.
Oh, that was in school.
O'Brien's Dry Goods.
The Armory,
The old armory.
the Armory,
The what, I'm sorry?
the Armory.
The armory.
That was on Second Street next to St. Peter's School.
School.
It's where the street goes through.
I think you're good till 9.
Well, it's
You can go
Donna,
on,
Donna's our committee chair, and she is going to preside and take this list and put it through the ringer.
That I will.
Yeah,
you can go on for years.
that's great. I think we are. Any questions for Donna or Renee or anybody? Soroptimists, Ornaments, you name it.
I have some out here for sale, all set up.
Help yourself too. We got lots of food and lots of coffee and water. Help yourself. Thank you.
What time did we order two? Yeah.
I don't even know what I have, and what I don't have. Well, I have to. Oh, okay. Oh, I never would. Oh, wow.
Okay.